We're at the head of Baddeck Bay. It's June 24th, 1996. We've been traveling about 400 feet and 80 knots, and time is 16:48 local time. And as you can see here, you're getting a very low-lying shore, grasses in the back shore, and a few small spits developed. In the head of the bay, there's some good anchorage, I suppose. Several people have their boats anchored up there. As we come along around the bay, you'll see in the cove here, there used to be the wreck of the Yankee cruise boat, 92-foot cruise boat that was used in the 1940s and 50s. I don't see it at the moment, but as you come out of here, you see some fairly expensive real estate, some large sailing boats, and beautiful little coves. The whole area is protected by a long spit that comes off of Ben. Time is 16:50. That's sort of called the harbor. The beach itself is mostly sandy, dune grass in the back shore, and the foreshore seems to be mostly sandy, although there's a cobble boulder lag in some of the areas. Coming up on Red Head, oddly enough, gets its name from the color of the granites there. And this is Ben, some fairly, probably 500-foot elevation and extensive lawns going up the slope. The beach itself seems to be mostly pebble.
The beach quickly changes to a rock cliff. There's a bit of fringy beach at the base of it to begin with. Very striking red cliffs. Then the beach disappears and you've got a cliff ranging from about, I guess, 8 to 12, maybe 15 meters elevation. Some caving at the base of it. Now we're getting a really great view of the Alexander Graham Bell house on the corner of Ben Bray. A spectacular setting overlooking the Bredor Lakes. Sheer cliff extends around the corner and further up into St. Patrick's Channel, or the Great Bredor Channel.
Going by Red Head, you can see the extensive bedrock exposures. The relief is probably about 15 to 30 meters right at the beach. Very narrow, fringy beach, high bedrock, somewhat consolidated material over top. We're in the granites here, and moving on towards Poker Dawes Pond, McCrae Point. See some gypsum exposed along the shore.
Dawes Pond, you can see gypsum exposed in the back shore. Along the main beach, the barrier is continuous, vegetated in the back, although it looks like there was an inlet at one point. There's unconsolidated cliffs which feed these barriers to either side. The beach seems to become discontinuous at McCrae Point here, and there's very shallow area of pebble and sand just offshore. But what's interesting is farther offshore there's a band of sand that extends all the way along shore. In fact, one of the inner bands goes into the inlet here at McCrae Cove.
1653. We're going to do a loop around McKillop's Pond. Good anchorage area. A little pond that has a lot of gypsum exposures around the back side of it. Probably only get your canoe in there, actually. Doesn't look like it would be all that great. There's a house just in here. Yeah, several exposures of gypsum. Very high, probably 30-meter relief along the shore. Looks like maybe some sinkholes in the basin. And then a barrier at the entrance to the channel is very shallow, probably only a few feet deep. The overlying gypsum, actually. Mostly cobble in the foreshore. Along this area towards Mackenzie's Point, there's substantial gypsum outcrops. That's sort of all gypsum outcrops. Gypsum rock along here, you see it crumbling bedrock into the water. There's rock outcrops. Coming up on Bevis Point, no, sorry, McDonald Pond, I guess it is, a very substantial cuspate foreland, linked together by gypsum outcrops, very shallow on the seaward side, and some beach ridges along the back of the beach. All along here there's rock outcrops and gypsum, very beautiful with the white color, and the fringing beach is very narrow, probably less than 10 meters or so. There's really no beach along here at all. There's a bit of a cobble lag in the nearshore area, and then it's all bedrock in the backshore. Again, coming up to another little cuspate foreland at Bevis Point. Time is 1657. Going into Big Harbor. Surprise Cove is sometimes called. You see a gypsum quarry just around the corner here in the harbor. You can see why. There's all the gypsum that's exposed along here. Really high shores. We'll go down to this one. Come back that way. Good anchorage in here. There's a marine railroad actually just past Port Bevis. It's to the quarry just in this part of the bay. There's a small foreland just on the inner part of the bay, an acreage, and the marine railway is just near the head of the bay. Maybe go straight and then come back so you can get the shot of the coming up to the top of Big Harbor, or the end of it, you're in the stratified deposits. There's some wetland at the head of the bay, but much of the west shore is gypsum outcrop. Very shallow at the head. we'll get a view of quite a large establishment that Dave Heffler visited a few years ago in his boat, owned by a surgeon and his wife. And this is where the Marine Railway was. You can see just going up the hill. There you get a view of the hill. It's substantial relief, probably about 20 meters. The old railway was there, and there's several homes. And we'll just cut across the other side of Big Harbor, or Surprise Cove, and head towards the Greater Brador. I think when we get around this corner, we'll probably heading back out to the outer part of the Great Brador. The elevations here are probably well over 500 feet at the top of the cliff. But at the shore, right alongside the road, cliffs are probably unstable, still over bedrock, and I would guess the 15 to 20 meter range, although it occasionally becomes a little lower. Coming up onto Big Harbor, there's an old wharf or ferry crossing. It used to go across the Brador to Ross Point. We're getting into the Proterozoic tuffs and andesites, a different kind of bedrock altogether. Time is 5:01 or 17:01. We're just off Big Harbor, and we're increasing now to a little over 350 feet and about 80 knots. Along here there's a series of forelands, mostly pebble, very deep water offshore as we head towards the Seal Island Bridge. Very strong currents on the tide changeover. High tide is around 225, so we're on a falling tide. The scarps along the back shore here are 15 and 20 meters, and going up to 600 feet. And you can see the frigid beaches along here. Yeah, you can go higher if you want, whatever. Frigid beach, bedrock cliffs, elevations 350 feet. At the top of the scarp, probably the power line is just coming up, going across the Greater Brador, and we're traveling about 60 knots at about 700 feet, just going across the power line. And the time is 17:03. Mostly granites along this area. It's called Ben Scalpi. Very impressive area of this part of the highlands. Only intermittent fringing beach along here. We'll drop down gradually as we get towards Seal Island. There's pockets of residential homes, some quarry, some low-lying areas, but for the most part it's a fairly high shore, a bouldery shore. As you get up towards the Seal Island Bridge, or before we talk about that, we'll mention that we're going up into an area of Kelly Mountain gneiss, and there's also Otter Harbor, where there used to be a lot of otters. Here you can see along this shore there seems to have been some clear cutting for some reason or other. Protect the shore or what, I don't know. And some new cutting for housing, I guess. We're just approaching Otter Point now at 1704. It's a low-lying area. It's Otter Island. And we'll go by Otter, on the inner part of Otter Island. You can see there's stratified drift in this area. Very sandy and gravelly. Several little groins have been built out by this person at their house. And if you get into Otter Cove or Harbor, you may find some old barges that used to carry sand and gravel back in the early 1900s. You'll see quarry activities on the side of the hill. And there's actually not much better beach development here given the source material. It's just a poorly developed beach along for the most part. And it's cliffs in the back shore. There's a boulder lag all along the shore. Coming up, there's actually an aquaculture activity going on in this part of Otter Harbor. I'm not quite sure what it is, whether it's oysters or salmon and trout. Going by New Harris Settlement, all stratified drift all along the shore towards Seal Point. And we'll be coming up on another large cage site for salmon and trout, owned by the Scotia Economic Development Corporation. This will be going by now. You can see the large cages. There's a camping area just past the cages as we go over the bridge. Seal Island Bridge itself is actually built on a foundation that extends offshore. There's a causeway and then the bridge, and 6 of the support structures are actually on shoals. Quite a large camping area, trailer park, right along these stratified drift areas. See there's extensive quarrying in the side of the cliffs there. This is one of the switchbacks of the Trans-Canada Highway that comes down Kelly Mountain. Kelly Mountain is made out of the gneiss rock, and it's very resistant. The currents here can be very strong. We're just a couple hours after high tide, so the flow is probably reversed, although the waves appear to be still blowing down the channel. Coming up on the New Harris Forks, again you get into these stratified drift deposits mapped by Doug Grant, and they really do show up well. A very nice brown color, and it looks a lot better drained than some of the other areas. There's some shoals extending off just offshore. the time is 17:08, and we're traveling at 380 knots. Coming up on the chain point. The relief here is excessive, well over 1,000 feet. Like I said, high tide was at 2:45, so we're pretty close to high tide right now. And as we can feel, the winds are starting to pick up a bit as they funnel down along. The sea breeze comes up in the afternoon along this part of the Bredor. Out in the outer part of the channel, there's intense scallop fishing and drag marks noted in a cruise in 1992 that they looked at. We're still the shoreline along here towards Kelly's Cove is a mixture of winnowed boulders and like slump deposits, or actually maybe riprap to protect the road. There's a road that runs right along the edge of the or base of the cliff. Probably a fair bit of debris comes down the cliff actually. Relief here again is probably pretty close to 1,000 feet. 300 meters. Almost an artificial beach all along the road, sort of riprap. It must be very deep. The south shore, though, it's a narrow fringe of narrow area just beside the road. As we come around the Kelly's Cove, you can see an old mine and probably unloading mechanism. And then we'll just go cut across and see the light at Carey Point and Moir Point. And then we'll cut across and head down the Big Bredor at 1711. Coming along this part of the Bredors, you're on the Boulanderie Island, and certainly have a high relief as well, but it's much more farmland along this area. And rock outcrops along a large part of the shore. Very little beach. Relief would be probably in the order of 15-20 meters right at the shore. Unconsolidate over bedrock. Little or no beach, and then a shallow fringe of cobble boulder, pebble cobble boulder. There's quite a bit of bedrock outcrop all along this shore. Treed almost right down to the water level, even though it's mostly bedrock. The elevation would be probably 30 meters. We're just getting back up to the past Duncan's Head, and just approaching the Seal Island Bridge again at 1514. This part of Boulanderie Island is underlain by picto group, sandstone, siltstone, and coal. And Much of the Brador is underlain by Carboniferous rocks. Said the currents in here can be anywhere as much as 8 knots, but generally 4 to 5 knots. A very strong current going through underneath the bridge. And there's the famous little cuspate foreland just on the other side of the Seal Island Bridge that was taken by Goldthwait in his Physiography of Nova Scotia book. We're traveling about 400 feet at 80 knots. Time is 17:14. Just went by the bridge and heading south west towards Sutherland Point. As you go farther into the Bradors, the shore tends to get a little bit lower, more of a gradual sloping backshore. The beach is mixed sand and pebble now. Almost more stratified deposits along this part now. And a few more barriers fronting little wetland, pockets of wetland. A bit more shallows along here just offshore. Mostly cobble boulder lag. There's an inlet there that drains into that small pond. This is along the Boulanderie Island again. It's a fairly continuous fringing beach, narrow, a lot of driftwood and coarse material in the near shore. You're getting into that sort of wide, shallow boulder lag again. It's going by one of the range lights at 17:16 their time, and then coming up onto the light at War Point. That's where one of the ships was actually burnt that was being built for Louisburg in the siege. The British found out that it was being built there by Boulanderie and his crew, and so they came and burnt it. Hence its name, Man of War Point. Heading towards a place called Monroe Point. It's a little low foreland. It's just past the power lines we're just going over. Monroe actually had a naval academy and actually schooled some of the best naval people that came out of the Maritimes. It used to be a local college in the area. Heading towards Ross Ferry.
Yeah, the shoreline along here is poorly developed beach, but there are some extensive shoals offshore. There's the artificially constrained channel coming up from that river. A lot of the shoreline is winnowed boulders. There's a narrow zone of sand right at the beach, and the relief is increasing up towards the road where it's around 15 meters. Very straight shore. Continuing along, there's a low erosional scarp, a small barrier just about encloses that embayment. There's a small outlet. erosional cliffs along the back shore with a very narrow fringing cobble pebble beach, some wharves. We're just coming up on Ross Ferry, which used to be the place where they used to cross the Great Bador Channel to Big Harbor. And the loading platform is still visible here as this concrete slab.
Much of Boulondry Peninsula was never occupied or had the residents on it, even though Boulondry, when he was given the land, said he'd bring in 150 settlers, but it never really materialized. And so most of the area was used as farmland, but because there was no real big towns, it was never developed, so it's remained pretty well unoccupied.